Hi, everyone. I'm meteorologist Joe Cioffi. It is a Sunday. Finally got into the double digits here, temperature-wise. It took long enough. I'm at a very, very exciting 15 degrees. I took the day off yesterday. Just needed a break after this incredible week that we've had with the Arctic cold, the snowfall. I got 16 inches here at my house in central Long Island. Took a few trips down to the frozen all the way across Great South Bay. I mean, I've seen this in late January and February and even into early March with respect to the extent of the ice cover here on the area waterways. It doesn't happen every year, but usually when it happens, it's deep in the winter. I cannot recall in my 30 years here having everything frozen the way it is this early. The lakes, yeah, the freshwater lakes and ponds, yeah, that happened. But as far as the bay is concerned, that I don't remember, and it's frozen pretty much all the way across unless they cut a channel open in the middle of it. And this time of year, there isn't that kind of traffic in the bay, since it's really used more by vacationers and people with their local people with their boats going out for the day rather than any kind of commercial activity. But nonetheless, a pretty amazing event. I was talking with a friend of mine who lives on the Jersey Shore, and one of the signatures about the wintertime in the Jersey Shore is that it really has to be almost perfect in terms of cold air to not see at least some rain in there or some sleet. And it's been remarkable where he is in central New Jersey coast, about halfway down, where we have had five or six snow events since early December. He has not seen a single raindrop or a single ice pellet out of any of those. And I think this goes to the fact that something that I've said many times with regards to winter time weather and the signature pattern that you try to figure out. In winters where it snows a lot, it just seems to find a way to do it, even in sometimes what you might think is not the most ideal situation. And I think that's what, certainly we're seeing in my area of the Northeast. It's been a bit uneven, though, because, the big storm here basically was confined to I-95. If you were pretty much north and west of I-95, you got far less. If you were along and east of I-95 from Philadelphia on up to New England, and even going south, if you were south and east of I-95, some places did rather well in terms of snowfall. So now, of course, we've had that. We've had this brutal cold air. We saw what happened in Boston, by the way, with the storm surge from this. And, when I was watching this happen, it never occurred to me that the water would freeze. And that's exactly what happened. The water didn't really go out with the tide. It froze on those streets and in those neighborhoods, and froze all the cars with them. I mean, that was just an incredible thing to see. And on top of that, getting a foot plus of snow. Amazing what this storm wound up doing. But now, of course, it is history, and we start to look ahead. And I got to tell you, even though the Arctic pattern is breaking down, which it has to do, it can't be like this at this extreme forever. Even though the Arctic pattern is breaking down, and even though it is going to allow for temperatures to finally get above freezing in many locations as early as tomorrow in some spots, but a little more widespread on Tuesday, it does offer some interesting possibilities down the road in a number of places. Also, for you folks out in the West, where you haven't really seen very much in the last couple of weeks, while everybody east of the Continental Divide has been pretty much freezing, you're going to get into some action here this week, and we're going to take a look at that as well. First off, though, I want to touch on what's going on at the moment with respect to advisories, watches, and warnings, and we actually have a fair number of them to show you. This is, of course, the Weather Service's map at weather.gov if you want to take a closer look at this. But we do have a large area of winter weather advisories for much of Missouri, Illinois except the extreme north and extreme south, Indiana except the extreme north, and into southwestern Ohio, Kentucky, eastern Tennessee, and even into parts of northeastern Alabama, northwestern Georgia for some snow, and in areas to the south, probably some freezing rain and some ice issues with this. And we're likely to see this extended into parts of the Northeast for later Monday into Monday night because of the fact that even though this is going to be an event primarily west of the Appalachians, the system coming eastward is going to weaken some. There should be enough moisture left to produce a light event. The problem is that if it winds up being sleet or freezing, or worse, freezing rain in some places, it may not be much of it, but it doesn't take much to cause some big problems. And it's been so bitter cold that we could have the temperature go up above 32, but the ground temperature is going to take hours in order to catch up. So it's going to be a very interesting evening commute tomorrow evening, I think, for my neck of the woods, Philadelphia, on up into New York City. In the meantime, out in the west, we've got winter storm watches up for eastern California in the mountains there. We're running actually all the way up from the northern part of the state right down into parts of Southern California, into the Southern California mountains. There's going to be a fairly strong storm that's going to be coming in pretty far to the south, and that is going to create some issues there. And, again, very, very interesting weather indeed. And I'm not sure what the reasoning is behind the blue in New Orleans. Let me just double check because apparently they are now the southern snow capital of the world. It's already snowed twice there this year, or maybe they're shooting for 3. What do they have up in terms of advisories? I just want to double check here. So they do have okay, it's something a little bit more reasonable for that part of the world. It's a flash flood watch because the southern part of the system that's coming into the eastern United States is not going to be phasing. It's going to be kind of separate, so there's a fairly decent area of rain that's associated with that. So, we've got a fairly busy couple of days ahead of us with this weak system. Sometimes you work almost as hard with the weak ones as you do with the stronger ones. So we'll start off, we'll bring up the satellite loop. I could see everybody's on board today, and that's really great for a Sunday. I figure I'd do this early so you guys can watch the football games in peace. And of course, selfishly, so could I. But here we go with the satellite loop. And you see skies up and down the eastern seaboard are clear. Warmer air is coming eastward, so initially it goes up and over the cold air. So as a result, you're seeing quite a bit of cloud cover from the Great Lakes down into Texas. The southern part of this system here, it's a weather front to the north with the low to the south, and the southern part of that system is just going to basically separate from it and linger down in the southern part of into the Gulf of Mexico and over Florida, and really not going to have any impact on the weather in the east. The northern stream is the weaker stream and is going to have a bit more limited in moisture. Now, out in the west, because we are going to see action shift now into California. And by the way, it was about at this time last year, as I recall, that the pattern, that rubber band snapped finally in the west. And right in the early part of January began what seemed to be an endless round period of flooding rains for California that lasted well over 2 months. It was just one system after another. We'll see if it evolves into something similar. But we do have low pressure. You can see there's an energy that's swinging in out to the west of California and extends pretty far south. And we also have subtropical moisture here streaming northward. A low is moving up into southwestern Canada at the top of the satellite loop. So the activity now with a bit of an opening and the bit of an opening in the west, we are going to be seeing some weather events out your way over the next couple of weeks. At least that's the way it seems. So let's go to our friendly neighborhood GFS and take a look at what's going on with our wonderful weather models. we are going to see, I want to start off with the upper air, because we are going to see the pattern change quite a bit going forward, and with the jet stream. But it's doesn't necessarily mean that we will not, here in the eastern part of the United States, if this storm was not enough for you, I would suggest that we may wind up with chances along the way that you may not necessarily be expecting. There's even in the most dire of weather patterns, it can sometimes just find a way, even for short periods of time. And rather than being in sort of this unrelenting cold that we've had, we may be where much of the time temperatures will be near or above average. But at the same time, when weather systems become relevant, that might be the one time where it gets cold enough for areas to get some snow and ice. So I think we're going to have, we're going to have some stuff to deal with as we move through the coming weeks. So we're starting. I actually is going to start back to the jet stream, the upper air, back on Thursday when we had this storm with the deep trough in the eastern part of the United States, and of course we are seeing that trough finally lifting out. Took a while. It's been in position for the most part for the last couple of weeks, and it does lift out. We're now into today, as that upper low is now pulled up east of the maritime provinces, and that allows the heights along the east coast to rise. You can see that the bluer areas on the map representing the colder air and colder pressures and heights aloft. That's all moving out to the northeast. But you still have some troughing. There's the next weather system coming into the western lakes. You can see it here from just east of Lake Winnipeg over Lake Superior. But also notice there's a southern stream system with an upper low visible apparent in northwestern Louisiana. But the streams are separate. Also, out in the west, there's a trough, the trough that's off the west coast. And that is going to be the system that comes in over into Tuesday, and it's a pretty wrapped up upper air storm. You can see it here coming in between San Francisco and Los Angeles. So this is a pretty big deal in terms of rain and snow. In the east, the weak system lifts up to the north. You see the southern stream system getting left behind in the Gulf of Mexico and just kind of disappears. And then as we move forward into this week, we are going to see, at least toward the end of the week, we're going to start to warm up here in the east to some degree. I think eventually we're going to contend with a weather front that's going to come on through, and there are going to be some waves on it. I think this is going to have some implications for parts of the Ohio Valley and the interior Northeast next weekend with regards to snow and ice. Now, one of the things I want to show you on today's run that's very interesting is that as we go through next weekend, the ridge in the west pops right back up. And you can see it builds very sharply back up through Alaska. And, they've got this long wave trough here in the east again. And you've got that flow setting up again from northwest Canada and the Arctic straight down into the Great Lakes. So there is an indication here that cold air will be coming back. And one of the things that the model does today, and we're going to have to see if there's some sort of follow-through on this, is as we move into, now we're into January 15th, the trough in the east strengthens and energy starts to pile down into the eastern part of the United States. And I think this is going to be something we're going to have to watch to see what happens. Of course, it's way early in the game. Things have to time out a certain way. But this is what I mean by the fact that it may not be the most perfect of patterns, but it's very interesting how even though the Arctic pattern breaks down, it tries to reappear again. And it may not be successful, but it certainly wants to go back to that. That might be something to think about when we get late in the month or going into February. If we're going to be in this transitional pattern for a couple of weeks, that it may want to switch back to something like what we had, maybe not to the extreme, something resembling that. I've noticed, in my experience over many years, that the initial pattern that sets up is the pattern that it often wants to migrate back to after taking a brief break. And as we go deeper into the long range, once that trough there, if it's real or not, we do have, again, this transitional pattern of some kind that we're going to have to deal with. And it involves troughing off the West Coast eventually. It looks like weak ridging on either side. So, it'll be interesting to see how this all evolves. This has a bit of a warm look to it, but again, this is also long range. And I want to kind of now back up and let's focus on what we have to deal with in the short term here. And by the way, the European last couple of runs was, kind of going with this idea for later, a week from today and early into the following week. Again, it's long range, and maybe tomorrow the models will go to something different. But for you snow lovers who will never ever get enough of this kind of weather, apparently, I wouldn't necessarily be. I certainly wouldn't be hanging the sign out that says winter's over, because it is not over by any stretch of the imagination. Okay, so why don't we bring up the map for the time being, and we don't care about day 16 at this point. So let's focus on what's going to happen here in the short term. So we've got these slew of winter weather advisories up, and you can see how the model tomorrow morning has snow in Ohio and into Indiana with a leading edge of ice, and there's your low down in Louisiana producing heavy rain. But again, these systems remain relatively separate, and that southern energy kind of gets lost in the sauce and gets left behind. This is what survives east of the mountains tomorrow. There's not a whole lot of support here. It's a light event, but sometimes, especially if you're dealing with a little bit of sleet or freezing rain at the wrong time, could be problematic, and we're going to be paying attention to that. In the meantime, here's the situation with the storm coming in the west, which has rain up and down California for the north to south, and actually on Tuesday brings in some very heavy rains in the Los Angeles area and on northward with snow up in the mountains, the rain going all the way up into Washington with some snows up in the northwest. And eventually, by the way, that low runs into the Rockies, and we have snows indicated from New Mexico all the way up through the northern Rockies from this low, which starts to get its act together up into northwestern Texas here. This could be a sizable snowfall for northern Colorado, Wyoming, and in through western Nebraska and the Dakotas. And eventually it translates eastward. I think there is a fair chance that this could produce a decent snowstorm for parts of the Central Plains and from eastern Colorado, southeastern Wyoming, but particularly in the Central Plains and running up into Iowa, Nebraska, and Minnesota, and most of Wisconsin except the southeastern part as the low moves east. Now, while this is all going on in the east, we're going to be kind of taking a 2 steps forward, 1 step back approach with regards to a warm-up, but we will get there. And you'll notice that this first wave goes by into the western lakes, snow into Wisconsin. A shot of colder air comes in behind it. That's that trough. All while, by the way, we've got another storm along about Thursday that comes into northwest Washington and brings some heavy snows across the Dakota, across Idaho, and eventually into parts of western Montana and Wyoming again. Meanwhile, in the east, now as that general troughing starts to set up, one of the things that I think we're going to have to look for is that we'll probably have a series of waves on that front. Each one is going to produce in coastal areas, of course, it's all rain. And you'll notice that it does show this next big high kind of wedging in, so that on the northern western edge of this late in this week, we could have a fairly extensive area of ice and snow developing. The model's been kind of showing that. The models have been kind of showing that for many days now, although it did start doing it along the coast, and now it's, of course, back further west, which is typical of the GFS. This wave for next Saturday runs northeastward, and there's still room maybe for one last wave that the model's kind of hinting with these isobars here, but doesn't really do very much with it. And high pressure starts to build in Now, of course, we start to deal with the idea of a trough in the eastern part of the United States, and you'll notice that low pressure develops off the southeast coast. We have a big highs enveloped around, and while the model doesn't really do anything specific in terms of deepening, it does show some potential here for some kind of cyclone development for now we're into the week of January 15th. So this would be maybe along about Tuesday, Wednesday of next week. Okay, not this coming week that starts today, but next week. So the overall pattern to me, I think, is very interesting. It's funny that it goes from being the Arctic pattern that it is to maybe something that is a little, that is going to be less cold, but on the other hand, it is going to have more opportunities for snow and ice ahead, and it's going to be a few places that have been quiet so far are going to participate in all of this. So let's say hi to everybody at this point. I'm glad everyone made it here on this Sunday afternoon. You had 13 days below freezing in Albany. Raymond, well, let me see, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31st, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. So this is actually, for me, it's 13 days. And I believe, I got to go back and count, but it might be the 8th or 9th. Today may be the 8th or 9th day for me in that 13-day stretch where temperatures did not get out of the teens. Which, I mean, when you think about it, that is just that's a remarkable feat. But I got to go back and count because that is just amazing to me. Florida, Northeast Florida did get their ice. They certainly did. I'm sorry, I'm just having to my glasses a little bit here. Let's see. Scott Olson, some models show freezing rain in Southeast PA. Others show just snow. What do you say? I think the mid layers of the atmosphere are going to warm up certainly faster than the bottom layers. It may wind up being a little bit both, but I would probably tend to lean toward the idea that it may be more sleet and freezing rain there than anything else. A lot's going to depend on how fast the precip, how much of it holds together, first of all, and how fast does it get in here. If it gets in here fast enough, it might cool down that column of the atmosphere a bit to have it more snow. But I'm going to lean to the idea that it may wind up being both at the start and then more freezing rain than anything else for Southeast PA, that is. Raymond is at 5 right now up in Albany. Cullen got to -5 in Northwest New Jersey. I got to 0 here at my house, 0, -1, right in there. We kind of had the wind drop off at the last minute last night, and the temperatures, I know in some places near me got to -2, -3. So sort of depends on where you are, whether you had a breeze or whether you saw the wind drop off to dead calm. I think I saw Poughkeepsie got to 13 below 0 in the Hudson Valley today. And there were records set in a number of places, but mostly at places that have the shorter data sets that only go back about 60 years or so. The stations that go back to the 1800s did not break a record because the records were all below 0 in the major cities, and they didn't quite get there. And that was mainly due to the wind. Just did not, there was too much of a wind for too long, and we, didn't see it drop off, down to dead calm with all this deep snow cover. If we had had that wind calm last night, I think I would have gone to 20 below here. Sean K., why does it look like the snow and ice skip over New Jersey on Monday? Well, what happens is when you have a system that doesn't have a lot of support, as it tries to move across Pennsylvania having a mountainous terrain, systems tend to weaken. And they also tend to leave the snow west of the mountains. And then they have to wait for that energy to kind of translate east of the mountains. And then the snow or the precipitation winds up developing east of you. And that's kind of what's happening here. We don't have a strong system here, and that's going to be that is going to be problematic. There's always the possibility that a lot of this moisture gets left behind and doesn't really make it over the top at all. I think some of it will, but it is minimal. It's mainly under 0.2 of an inch, and in some places it's mainly under 1/10 of an inch. D.O. Nandkumar, 11 degrees in New York City right now. Yes, it is still very cold. I think I'm up to 14 or 15. I'm not sure. I can't see my thermometer. It's over sitting on my fireplace, which is now going to need some wood shortly. Mago Minecraft, what is my opinion on wild weather in 17 and how a lot of people are attributing it to climate change? Well, look, it's funny how people with political bents wind up on both sides of the equation. I'm going to take like the ultimate agnostic view here to some degree, because either both sides are going to, both political sides trying to use this to, whatever advantage that they can use it to. I will say that again, you cannot attribute individual weather events to the idea of climate change. Weather and climate are two different things, and we do weather here. We don't really do any type of long-term climate analysis. That I leave to people who are really into that. That's not my thing. But let me also say that what happened last week with the storm that developed off the East Coast, if you hear a politician claiming, making claims that, suddenly they have a background, even a minimal background in meteorology and climatology, that's a shake my head moment. That's just ridiculous. We've had storms like this before. From the standpoint of snow, by the way, in terms of snowfall, this was not remarkable in terms of snow amounts. I didn't see any 2 and 3 foot snow amounts around. Maybe I missed something, but if someone did get that, maybe they could let me know. But most of the amounts here were on the order of 1 foot to 1.5 foot where I am. And the major cities, New York City didn't get 1 foot. I believe they did get 10 inches or maybe a little bit more than that. So, from the standpoint of snowfall, not really overly remarkable. From the standpoint of blizzard conditions, well, we had them for about, 6 to 7 hours. I've been through storms around here in the past 30 years that have produced, have produced longer periods. Again, you cannot attribute what happened one event, and the idea that they're getting strong. This is evidence that that storms are getting stronger is just nonsense. Okay, it really is. It's just nonsense. We've had storms this deep in the Atlantic before. This is not. This didn't just suddenly happen. Okay. Now, let me just say this: if 20, 30 years from now, they go back and they kind of look at the number of storms that have occurred and say, well, you know what? The storm frequency has increased. The intensity of these storms on average has increased. That is something for someone to figure out down the road. But as far as, what's just happened, it's happened before. It's going to happen again. Okay, so just bear that in mind. Yes, John Schultz, they're playing hockey on the Great South Bay. They're playing hockey on Lake Ronkonkoma, which is not very remarkable since that's a freshwater lake. But the Great South Bay is saltwater. Yeah, they were skating and playing hockey, and they probably could put their cars on the Great South Bay. Right now, the ice is so thick. Franklin Taylor, the running daily average temperature for the year so far is 19.3 degrees. Normal daily mean would be around 36 in northern Arkansas. Wow, that's 17 degrees below average. Well, those kind of departures of being 20 or more degrees below average certainly apply to where I am. That would put our average temperatures down in somewhere in the mid-teens for the first 7 days, of the month of January, and going back even into the days from the last week of December. Just an incredible stretch of weather. And I think unless we get something completely opposite in terms of of departures of going above normal in order to sort of equal them out, I think it's a pretty well guaranteed that the first we're going to be below average tomorrow. Thursday probably near average. Wednesday a little below average. So the first 10 days of the month are going to be so solidly below average that it would take a monumental warm-up during the next 21 days in order to create an above-average month. I mean, I think it locks, barring a surprise, the month of January is going to finish below average, as did the month of December. Delvin, every time there's a 6 o'clock live stream, you keep getting kicked out for dinner. Well, I did it early, so you're unless you're getting kicked out for lunch, but it doesn't seem to be that the case today. And it is good to see you on here today. I'm just trying to make sure I got every question here because we're going to cut it. We're going to bring this to an end shortly. And I think I got everybody covered. Okay. Oh, Mary Atkins, nice to that you're on board. I think you're new. Well, good to see you here. Michigan -10 wind chill, -15 last 2 days, and now you're up to about 20. Warm-ups come fast and furious. It's amazing when you stretch the rubber band how quickly it can stretch right back. Anthony Siders asking me about the significant snow for Ohio next Saturday. Let's watch that front, Anthony, and how it reacts, how those waves that develop on it. I think models are going to be changing along the way in terms of the timing. So we'll have to see how that is with respect to the colder air that's going to be coming back. But right now, I would certainly watch it with interest that you might get something. 99 Wolves. Models can say a snowstorm that goes from California to Detroit in 2 weeks, and it never happens. Well, that's why we really, 99 Wolves, as you know, that's why we don't really jump up and down when we see these things in the long term. I'm more interested in the upper air pattern because I think that's where you're going to see when you watch the evolution of the upper air pattern. As we watched it going into this, the Arctic jet that's set up, that's where we can gather our clues for how this is all going to play out in the longer term. One of the things that I would argue against big storms going to the Great Lakes is the fact that we haven't really seen that so far. There's been more of a tendency for everything to happen in the east, and unless there's a monumental change in the pattern, which it's always possible, unless there's a monumental change in the weather pattern, I would kind of argue against intense systems going to the Great Lakes. They may wind up being flatter systems and, they certainly could wind up producing some snows. But in terms of wrapped up lows, I'm not seeing that right now. And let's see. I think I got everybody. Jimmy Anderson, you're new. Good to see you, Jimmy Anderson. Nice that you're on board here. SPC Mansfield, also from Massachusetts. Nice to see you here as well, participating in the conversation. We like that. Will spring be freezing or warm for Massachusetts this year? Well, I'll take the cop-out answer, and I think the answer would be at times a little of both. Right now, we seem to be, top-heavy in all the cold air. We're going to bring in some milder air going forward, but this is certainly turning out to be a very interesting winter so far. And I would agree with Garo Vestas, by the way. Yes, we do need a break, and I'm really looking forward to that break right now because it's been a very, very tiring couple of weeks. Sean K, thank you very much for hitting Super Chat. Really appreciate it. David Fuller, you asked for what's Joe's page. Okay, which page? Because I got a few of them. I mean, if you're talking about my website, you can, let me put those up for you. I'll put some links up so you guys can check a few things out. By the way, one of the things I have on my site, if you go to the snow forecast page at the top menu, I put all the National Weather Service snow forecasts on one page, and though their forecast maps update automatically. So if you bookmark that, you can use it everywhere I have everywhere from Virginia on up into northern New England and back to western New York and western Pennsylvania. So it's pretty, pretty useful if you want to go just one place quick instead of punching up every single website, every single Weather Service website in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. I got it all on one page for you, so it's like sort of like a one-stop shop. So check that out. And is that what you wanted, David? You just wanted my website? That's great. But I'm going to put something up here too. Let's see. So by the way, for those of you who want a little bit of memorabilia, I have it there, but don't feel obligated. I'm going, obviously don't feel obligated, but I know a lot of you, some of you like to have some fun stuff. So I made a little mug, a couple of mugs with regards to the blizzard we just had, and I also. They were calling it the bomb cyclone, but I kind of went with it the other way, and I called it the cyclone bomb because I don't know. They hashtag things, and the next thing you know, somebody owns the hashtag. But here's one version of it, and let me see. I do have a second version of it, and it's disappeared on me for some reason. So I will have to take care of that and see what is the problem. But no matter. It's up there. If you guys you want to take a look, by all means, please do. And here's some of the other stuff. I do have to eat like everybody else, so I just have to put it out there. I don't mean to be shameless self-promoting, but you know what? It's the reality. I got to, we all have to eat. Thank you so much, CNN is fake news. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I just try and do my best. Okay, so what is 404 not found? So which one is 404 not found? If someone could wait a minute. So hold on. Wait a second. Okay. Which page is a 404? Let me know. Let me just try here. Oh, God. That's odd. Very odd. Boy, this is really weird. Let me see something weird's going on. I see it there. For some reason, it moved to the top. It might be a temporary issue, but let me just put this up. Let's try this one. Okay, try that one. I was able. No worries, CNN is fake news. So try that one. I don't know what's going on. I noticed that there's I also got the 404 error. It might just be a temporary thing because I was able to get to the main page. But if you look on the main homepage with all the listings, you'll see that there's some stuff from the storm from the other day, and of course some stuff that I have from past days. So anyway, thank you very much, by the way, for being here on this Sunday. It's almost time to get ready for some football, so why don't we do that? In the meantime, have a great rest of your day. Check out the website, meteorologistjoecioffi.com, my Facebook page, Meteorologist Joe Cioffi. And I'm thinking I probably won't be back until tomorrow. Those of you on Long Island, tomorrow night I'll be at the Bayport Blue Point Library, assuming that the weather doesn't get in the way, at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. That's the Bayport Blue Point Library in Blue Point, New York, which is right near Patchogue, and not too far off Sunrise Highway and not too far off the Long Island Expressway. So if you'd like to come out, by all means, please do. And it would be great to see you. I think we're going to have a lot of fun tomorrow. We can talk about the storm we just had, the weather pattern we've had, and where we are going forward from here. So have a great rest of your day, and we will see you on Monday.